In May of 2023, I had a light bulb moment from seat 7C on a cross-country flight. A light bulb moment about the power of communication and expectations and what happens when they don't align. You see, earlier that day, I sat in a chilly coffee shop on the south side of DC, sipping an overly bitter latte. In walks in my boss, and after ordering his own bitter cup, he proceeded to tell me that this would be my last day with the organization. And the irony of this, I was relieved. What had begun as a dream job had turned into something I dreaded daily, and I didn't understand why. So as I sat on that flight and I rolled through the movie reel of scenes from the previous year, I suddenly saw a pattern emerge, a pattern of unmet, unarticulated expectations. And just like that, I was transported back 16 years to my own dissertation research on a concept called psychological contract. Psychological contract is the unspoken expectations we take into the workplace. Things like the way we want to be valued, or what we perceive as work-life balance, or perhaps the support that we expect on the way to our career path. We garner these ideas from our outside perspectives of the organization, or conversations we have during the interview, or perhaps things from our previous work that we just assume are universal. First introduced by Chris Argus in his 1960 book, Understanding Organizational Behavior. The term was really modernized by Denise Russo in the 80s and 90s. I found her research as an early doctoral student and was immediately attached to the concept. Myself and other researchers that followed in her footsteps really looked not just at the existence of these expectations, but what happens when they remain unspoken. We consistently found that regardless of organizational setting, gender, race, job title, that unarticulated, unmatched expectations between an employer and an employee, if remained that way, would be a deterioration of trust in the organization. Even in small ways, it would be cumulative. I like to think of these as invisible snake bites. We are likely to survive a single snake bite, but if we're bit over and over again, the cumulative venom will always kill us. Examples of these snake bites include an organization who offers unlimited PTO, but then fosters a culture that shames you if you take time off. Or perhaps they bring you in, they hire you for your innovation and your ideas, only to tell you at every meeting, we just don't do that here. Organizations across the globe are struggling with these invisible snake bites and how they're negatively affecting organizational culture. And in fact, in 2023, there's a poll that stated that 33% of the global workforce was disengaged, a third of the workforce. And this is not just detrimental to the physical and mental emotions of the employee. This goes directly to the organizational bottom line. Teams that are disengaged are said to have 18% lower productivity, 15% lower profitability, and it's expected to cost the global economy $8.9 trillion a year. That's 9% of the global GDP. Unfortunately, what was happening 3 decades ago clearly is still happening today. Trends like quiet quitting, entitlement mentality, and professionalism deficits have been spread across the news as detriments to Gen Z. But the truth is, every time a new generation comes into the workforce, they bring new expectations, new communication patterns, and that always causes conflict if those aren't mitigated. Over the last 2 years, I have rededicated myself to exploring this research that I started so many years ago on invisible snake bites. I've worked with organizations across the US and abroad to figure out what we can do to change this in organizations today. And what rose to the top were 3 trends that help us leverage psychological contracts for the betterment of the organization. First, set expectations early. First impressions are not just about interpersonal relationships. They're also so important for when an employee and an employer come together for the first time. In fact, the first 45 days can often be the most critical to the tenure of that employee for the rest of their career at the organization. Sadly, organizations have been undervaluing and under-resourcing onboarding for the last decade, and we need a resurgence. Onboarding should not just be a one-way conversation about systems and logistics, but rather a two-way conversation where you listen to the employee to understand what their expectations of the job are, what was their former work culture, what are they hoping to get out of our organization in terms of career success. It's also the place for the organization to set boundaries, clear success measures, and mitigate any places where perhaps the culture is a little different. And let's talk that out. Onboarding is the first step in genuine connection, which brings me to my second point. We have to foster genuine connection with those in our workplace and our teams. Genuine connection has two components, openness and diligence. An openness to share of yourself and to see the value in everyone that plays a role on the team. And diligence to work day after day to build trust through good communication. This can't happen with only cheeky games or shallow experiences or even virtual happy hours. It's fostered through a culture of curiosity where we're regularly raising up the value that each person on the team plays and how it intertwines together. In my aforementioned position, I was dropped into a tight-knit team like a new kid in a lunchroom in a middle school. I was not only unnoticed, but unwanted. It was a brand newly created position, and it was remote. I had no chance to foster that curiosity and really be seen as a valuable member of the team. I took out all of my tools of connection. I thought, I got this. And as I started to deploy them one by one, they continued to not work. And the more stonewalled I got, the more disheartened I became about the role and my place at the organization. I would slowly back away from the role. I was the definition of quiet quitting, slowly disengaging day after day until I was offering the organization a fraction of what I could be offering them and a fraction of what they deserved. Which brings me to my final point. Honor our failures. I would bet that most of you would not think I would start this talk by talking about a career fail. But who among us hasn't had some sort of failure in our personal or professional lives? The more we open up space to have those candid conversations, the more we're able to talk about setbacks and challenges, and most important, lessons learned. When an organization can foster that kind of transparency, it allows employees to feel safe for creativity and risk-taking, and employers to learn valuable insights about what's happening on the ground. Vulnerability is not a weakness, so we should lean in, be open to feedback, be comfortable in discomfort. It builds trust, brick by imperfect brick. So here is my challenge to you, from someone who learned these lessons the hard way with a latte in hand and pink slip in pocket. Acknowledge your invisible snake bites. Take time to really think through where are the places where my expectations and the expectations of my team or my organization are misaligned? And how can we articulate those to get back on the same page? Because in the end, we are not just managing machines, we are cultivating meaningful work. And if we can align the unspoken with the spoken and the job description with the lived experience, then we can change workplace culture for good. No snake bites in sight. Thank you.